Hi, I'm Reeza Thomson. Today I'd like to talk about how negative programs formed in our childhood can become the main causes for people who find themselves in codependent relationships. As mentioned in my previous video, for example, when a woman finds herself in a complicated relationship with a man who is unavailable, a complex person, a man who doesn't choose one woman, who chooses relationships based on lies, this always ties back to the woman's relationship with her own father. Women don't realize this when they are in such relationships because their mother didn't explain to them in childhood what love is, what love means in a woman's life, and that relationships can actually be trusting and reliable. The mother didn't explain this because she didn't want to, but because she herself didn't know what such relationships looked like. She never had them. For example, the mother might have gone through a painful and traumatic divorce, and her former husband, perhaps an alcoholic, was excluded from the child's life. The daughter had no contact with the most important man in her life growing up from the very beginning, as that relationship was interrupted due to certain circumstances. And after the divorce, the mother lived in pain and suffering, doing everything she could to protect her daughter from a relationship with her father, sometimes unconsciously. The girl grows up not knowing what peaceful, trusting relationship looks like, how to create them, or how to attract men who don't bring pain into her life. Because she grew up wounded by this pain, she moves through life with the energy of an immature and vulnerable woman who can be manipulated, criticized, and not valued, just like her parents were. As this woman grows older, she feels internally that she's not good enough to be chosen because the most painful and traumatic rejection of her life, her father's rejection, has marked her. She grew up in an incomplete family and sees herself as incomplete. These thoughts of inadequacy radiate from her with the thoughts like, I'm not good enough, I'm not valuable. We attract people into our lives who match our inner state. If we carry these kind of feelings and behavioral patterns, no matter what we do, nothing changes. And inner pain always attracts more pain in the relationships, and problems attract more problems. You will always agree to relationships that are traumatic. You won't be the only one, and you'll be submissive and accommodating. You agree to continue being wounded because you don't know how to live differently. You got used to being the victim, used to suffering, and used to struggling. Thus, a woman becomes predisposed to remain in situations where she feels bad and normalizes it at some point unconsciously. We all know some women in our circles who lower their standards by agreeing to be in relationships where commitment or marriage isn't offered, even if they want it very much. Some of them wouldn't even dare mentioning it to their partners because of the fear of rejection. That's because they are unconsciously and deeply convinced that they are not good enough to be chosen to be the only one. Men behave in exactly the same way, demonstrating low self-esteem. They end up with women who approach them first because they usually don't dare to think that they can choose too. They end up lowering their standards by committing to a woman just because she chose him. A man in that relationship knows that they're not quite happy, but they're afraid of rejection and being left alone. Unconsciously, he deeply believes that he's not good enough to be chosen by another woman or by a better woman and would not be able to walk away. And severe forms of such relationships include cases where women constantly tell their partners that they should be grateful for being chosen, otherwise they would be lonely or end up dying alone. You can imagine how those words can affect a man who grew up with rejection trauma. In situations where the mother is only close person to a girl, the girl strives to fulfill everything her mother demands, following her mother's rules and instructions to avoid disappointing her. She wants to feel needed, she wants to feel important and not alone. And these demanding relationships form a strategy of pleasing others in the child as the girl becomes accustomed to pleasing her mother, because for a child, the most terrifying thing is losing her mother's love. It's natural for the child to know and feel that her mother loves her and she needs her. And when the child doesn't meet their parents' expectations, how is this punished? By withholding love, and the parents usually say, go away, leave me alone, I know where you got that from, I don't want to see you, or go back to your room, and so on, Criticism, detachment, and even cruelty are used by parents to correct the child's mistakes, pushing her to seek forgiveness and prove her worth in order to deserve love. I'm mostly talking about girls and women, but this is also common for boys, especially those raised by authoritarian mothers. This creates low self esteem, insecurity, emotional vulnerability, and a strong need for belonging. From childhood, not only does a pattern of people pleasing behavior forms, but also a hormonal dependence on beta endorphins. Endorphins, also called as happiness hormones, activate the initial reward system in the child's brain. The child gets used to deriving pleasure through the stress they live in, and naturally the body adapts to beta endorphins. A person grows up needing to suffer first in order to then feel good. The reward system in the healthy environment is formed different. Children in such environments are not forced to feel that they need to earn their parents' love and do not need to please people to earn attention and love. Here is another example from a real life scenario. A woman may enter relationships with abusive and rejecting man, and even though she consciously dislikes the situation, she is dependent on it. Abuse in all forms, like emotional and physical, unavailability, for instance, when a man criticizes her or hits her, and that's when beta endorphins are released. After the conflict comes down later on, the woman can consciously, through her tone and body language, tries to provoke another conflict. He lashes out and she gets her endorphin hit. Even if he's kind to her the next day, her need for endorphins remains, or you may have seen women asking her partner if she's fat. And if he says yes, he gained some weight, she will lash out. So she provoked him there unconsciously to create stress and receive that endorphin supply. The woman will continue seeking out this kind of relationship dynamic to satisfy her endorphin addiction. That's what we call endorphin dependency through stress. And in codependent relationships, both partners mirror each other by displaying the same behavior, by creating stressful situations for each other. People in such relationships think that they're in love with the person and feel somewhat addicted to the person, as if they can't live without them and they can be happy only with that partner. Quite dramatic, right? In fact, they are simply addicted to the stress and their partners are supplying it. It also You can also compare it with alcohol or drug addiction. People heavily dependent on those substances will find any excuse to get their supply. They will always say that it makes them feel better, although they know it's not good for them. And it's the same with the stress addiction. Stress is created unconsciously, even though everyone understands that they don't like arguing and they don't like fighting, yet they thrive on it. My next video will be about solutions for those of you who would like to break free from the negative belief and codependent relationships. We will explore the ways of rewriting your program in order to get that happy and peaceful relationship you really, really want. Please feel free to let me know your questions and your insights in the comments below. And remember that I provide free of charge consultations, and get in touch if you would like to embark on your therapy journey.